what is happening in a lot of organisations is that people don't believe that we're meeting the expectations of the customers. And that leads to a lot of changes. So one of the changes that's happening is this change in roles. So you've got your executives who want information to make decisions. You've got the service management people who just want to respond to customers and deliver value. And then ultimately you've got employees who just want what they want and want to be able to do it, and that's it. You know, they want access to systems, they want answers to questions, and they just want to be productive. And I think that's a really interesting change. We need to understand these different groups. So one of the things that we're having in the industry is this different type of reactions to various systems. So if you look at this here where you go and you put a service management solution in place, and I go back 15 and 20 years ago to when I started doing this, and people were just trying to solve chaos. We went and got things like good practice to solve chaos, to get a common language, so we could all talk the same language. And we went through a stage of being reactive, where we'd go and we'd upgrade our systems, and we'd want to react to what the customers want, and we'd want to assure that they could get what they wanted when they wanted. Now you've got a proactive environment where we don't want to wait for the phone to ring, we want to solve the problem in advance. We want to start thinking about what's going wrong and how it's going. And if you look at the solution stacks that kind of map to that, we all started in the beginning where we had people, process and technology was always the last thing. We'd look at our people, we'd educate our people and train our people, we'd get them good, we'd look at our processes internally, we'd go and understand what they were, and then we'd go and find a piece of technology that would help us deliver those processes that we desired in our organisation. And one of the interesting comments about this was initially we all had different processes, right? We all had a different way of answering the phone, of solving an incident and driving value. So one of the challenges that's happened in every 3 or 4 years, and I was talking to the analysts last week, and they were telling me that every 3 or 4 years what happens is most organisations just decide, okay, whatever we're doing is not working, let's just go and grab a new tool set and implement it, and that'll solve everything. New tool solves all the problems of the world, nothing better to do. So what would happen is you'd go and get a new tool set and you'd go through the whole process again. You'd go through this implementation phase, you'd go and change it and adapt it to what you wanted to do. You'd configure it, administer it, and then you may upgrade it if you've got some resources you can find, and then ultimately you'd extend it and add more processes. So what's happened in the industry for many of us is we've got to a point with on-premise solutions where we're no longer upgrading in a reasonable time frame. The other thing we've discovered is that our changes in the way we implement an incident is all the same everywhere. So we've reached a stage where, going forward, what we want to do is understand what we want and deliver it. So let's look at where we are traditionally. So you've got this notion of technical debt in the industry. You may have heard of it. Technical debt is where you've invested in solutions and you've gone and got it and you've gone and the business has changed and business has changed the outcome and you haven't invested in new technology. And that technical debt remains. You haven't written off the cost of the asset or received the value. So look at the various areas in terms of how it hurts user experience. You know, and you look at the things like, in the old days, all was phone support. You call somebody and they'd answer the phone, and we actually reduced the cost of that by implementing what I call log and flog. You'd call a service centre, they'd log it, and then they'd flog that incident off to somebody else who'd resolve it, right? We've all been there. Lowest cost supplier, lowest cost delivery. Now then you've got these things like email. Email support's great, isn't it? You write an email and send it to somebody and hopefully it gets fixed. Well, I don't know about you, but most times I do that. It never goes anywhere. It just ends up in somebody's inbox and they get to it in 2 weeks and say, have you resolved that? Then we implemented systems like chat, and you can see that happening more and more today. And then you've got this notion now of web requests and phone requests and things like that. But what people want to do today is they want to self-triage and self-resolve and do self-service. And they want to collaborate with their peers. So what's happening in terms of bringing the cost down? Now it's all about the experience and bringing the experience up. We want to actually use these solutions to get value out of our business. You know, recently a good example was when my iPhone died recently. I had a problem, I fell over and cracked the screen. So what I did there is I called the service desk and I logged a ticket, and I decided to test the service desk response versus using that wonderful tool called Google Search. So I did a Google search for the answer, and straight away I found out that I could actually go down the road and replace the screen on my iPhone for $80, or I could buy the screen and do it myself for a little bit less than that, and it gave me all the steps to do it. Now, being a person who likes to think that they're a virtual wide-gen, of course I went and bought the screen and did it myself. And it didn't take long and it was solved, right? In fact, I got a new screen and had my iPhone working before the service desk called me back, which was kind of interesting, right? So you see this collaboration where I've been collaborating with my peers, I've been working with them and driving out the value. And if you look at this in terms of self-service, if you want new access to solutions or services, you want to be able to self-service that. And that's one of those things that we're now seeing to be paramount in terms of our industry today. What we're seeing is things like phone support decrease, chat support decrease, and also email as we look to this driving out collaboration. So what we want to do is get to what we call escape velocity, where we want to implement processes and solutions that make sense, and we want to actually execute so that we deliver value back to our customers, whoever they are. Now, one of the interesting changes that's happening today is when I first started in service management, my customers were internal employees. They're people I worked with. Today, that's not necessarily the case. Today, our end users are actually the end users. And I don't know about you, but when I expect an answer and I'm on a home banking site or an internet banking site and something goes wrong, I actually want to be able to triage that problem myself. So I want self-service. So what we're seeing is a fundamental and radical change in service management where we no longer want to administer the systems, we no longer manage the hardware, we actually want to spend our resources on being proactive. Proactive problem management, proactive resource management, proactive helping the customer deliver what they want. So if we look at some of the traditional approaches, you know, one of the things I see today is, if you look at this, any time you're implementing internal systems, one of the stats out of the PMI Institute tell us that where you're actually spending resources on your own systems, you're actually going to have quite a high failure rate. It comes back to IT, you know, kind of being the cobbler. You know, cobbler's children has no shoes because they're so busy servicing the end user, they don't look after themselves. I think that's one of the areas that we need to really resolve. We need to be focused on delivering value to the end customer, the end consumer, and not focused on internal systems. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is this huge push towards software as a service in many areas of what we do today. In fact, the analysts tell us that by 2020, most internal systems will actually be delivered as some form of as a service. Whether it's infrastructure as a service, software as a service, security as a service, no matter what it is, it's a service. So Gartner wrote a really good report which was published late last year, where they talked about the fact that traditional SaaS, the SaaS solutions that are out there today, haven't really delivered on the promise of true service management, on true value. And it's really interesting to look at that. So if you go and talk to Gartner, and they do hundreds of inquiries all the time, they'll tell you that one of the stats they have is 52% of global organizations took about the same time to deliver a solution on a SaaS solution as an on-premise solution. So why is that? Why is that happening? Why are we not creating the value? Well, it comes back to a fundamental issue that we're focused on the wrong things. If we're focusing on customization and changing the system and dramatic change and coding and JavaScript and things like that, we're not actually focused on the value that the customer wants. And if you look at this industry, even the initial SaaS solutions that were rolled out 4 and 5 years ago, as most of the organisations go to look at the renewal cycles for those, what we're seeing in the industry is that churn that's happened in service management continue again. Customers are churning yet again from one solution to another. Now, sooner or later, the churn has to stop. We actually have to go and focus on end users. The other interesting proposition that we see out of service management is where you go and do a business case with SaaS, is typically you're looking for a business case that reduces staff involved in actual managing the system or the solution. Does that mean headcount out the door? No. What it actually means is we want to take that headcount and we want to redeploy the headcount for more proactive work. For instance, if we're doing reactive problem management today, I probably want to take some of that headcount back and move it into proactive problem management. I want to look at where the issues and events and incidents are happening in my organisation, and I want to start looking at them in advance and moving that headcount to being proactive. Because let's be sure, we expect always-on systems today. We expect things to be working. And the reality of it is, when my website performance is slow, I want you to know about it beforehand and resolve it beforehand so that I don't have to actually call you. So this is one of the actually interesting aspects. So in order to deliver true value, one of the propositions that I talk about often is you really need to understand who your audience is. For instance, if your audience is an executive manager, board of directors, or a senior manager, one of the things you want to do there is you want to give them decision-making information, not granular, in-the-weeds data. If they want that, that's fine, but in reality, they want to just know what the decision-making data is. They want that high-level advanced reporting. Then you've got your traditional power users. Now, I don't know about you, but everybody wants to be a power user, right? Everybody wants to have that power to do something. So if you look at what's happening to a power user, for instance, they want to do things like automatically discover and inventory assets in their organization. They want to know about them. They actually don't want to touch them. They want it to happen automatically for them. Then you want to go and look at how you automate. Now, I don't know about you, but most of the services I have today are what I call hybrid. Part is inside my organization, part is outside, and a lot of them are all outside. And I want to be able to automate and provision those services without actually physically touching them. And that's one of those key aspects. I want to integrate between different systems, systems of record, third-party products, and things my own people are doing. And of course, I want to offer a service desk. At the low level, you've got this notion, this new user, this new end user, the business consumer. And a business consumer is typically not going to want to worry about IT things. You may have heard the term citizen developer as well, where you can see end users wanting to provision their own workflow. They want to access everything using mobility today. And most important, they want to be able to collaborate. They want to be able to collaborate with each other. They want to be able to collaborate with their peers. And they may even want to collaborate outside their organization. And I think this is a key driver in going forward. So in terms of what do you do to deliver software as a service or SaaS, whether it's IT service management or project and portfolio management or executive data, what you want to be able to do is understand and base the solution on a couple of premises. The first is user delight. What does that mean? That means the user should be able to use the solution without any training and education. This is one of the gotchas today with any solution you're developing. The end user should be able to pick it up and use it. And if you don't believe me, go grab your Android or iPhone and go and download an app and start using it. I don't know about you, but if I'm not productive in just a minute or two, I delete the app. It doesn't matter if I spend $1.99, 99 cents, or $5.99. I delete it and I'm done with it. And that's one of the aspects of what we need to do today. People need to be able to be immediately productive. Secondly, they need to be able to configure it. They need to be able to change it. Every environment is a little bit different. And yes, an incident is an incident, a problem is a problem, and a change is a change. But there could be different paths to go through, and you need to transition that. You need to be able to do it quite simply and easily without writing JavaScript or Java code. That's got to be a premise going forward. I think the other aspect of these solutions, anything as a service, is that it needs to be automatically upgraded. You shouldn't need to wait months or years or weeks even to upgrade. It should happen automatically for you, because that leads to faster value and people being able to actually focus on what they do. And then lower total cost of ownership. And that is delivered across the whole spectrum, everything from the end user employee back to the administrator. And I think that's one of the key differentiators going forward. So we need to be focused on the end user and the consumer and what they do and how they do it. And that needs to be a key driver. So going forward, that's one of the objectives. Now, for those who missed it, I do strategy for the IT business management area. And these principles are exactly what we've been applying in terms of solution sets going forward. The first and guiding principle we have is it being easy to use or intuitive. Almost understanding what the consumer or the end user wants and how they want to use it. So one of the things about service management is it's got to be about getting my job, whatever it is, done simply and easily. I need to be able to easily leverage the platform, use the solution, search on information, and drive the outcome. The user interface needs to be very simple, clean, uncluttered, and simple to use. And I don't mean simple as in just, totally removing all forms of complexity, but the ability to represent it in a way that makes sense. There's a big term in the industry about configuration versus customization. With today's technology, we should be able to configure. What does that mean? It means to be able to simply and easily change the outcome of a solution, and flashing going on all over the place, change the solution so that we can simply drive the value, so that you can change the options very simply. You can use drop-down lists, you can use parameterized solutions, rather than writing JavaScript or some form of code. One of the big problems we've had with solutions in the past have been the amount of code. If we're writing consistent code to customize, then we end up in a situation where the upgrades become difficult. So one of the options we have, and one of the things design principles we have, is the ability to be able to change the flow, change the use, without actually writing code. A big productivity initiative for all of us today is automation. We need to be able to automate processes. And why do we need to be able to automate? Well, most of our services today are getting complex. They involve multiple areas and multiple systems, in-house, out-of-house. For instance, many of you may be, for instance, using Amazon or Google or some form of third-party provider. As you go and provision these environments, you don't want to be going to each one and effectively doing processes and instructions with human process to do these and provision these. This implements process and error. More importantly than provisioning them, you want to deprovision. You want to understand the usage parameters and the guidance and how long you're going to keep an environment for, and deprovision when it's not being used. And this is a secondary part of this. When you provision up, you've got to be able to provision down as well. And this is one of the clear concepts that I see in terms of automation. You need to be able to understand where you're at with your automation and how it's going, if it's delivering to progress or not. You need to be able to use a request object to automate services so that you can empower end users to drive value as well. Mobility is key today. Today, it's all about being mobile. And, I think that's true. If I've watched people outside and you've been in the mobile area here today, you've seen that people are being productive using mobility. And I think that's one of the key aspects. Now, mobile itself is not just a web user experience in a mobile badge. It's actually about using the capabilities of the device. It's about understanding geolocation, who you are, what role you have, what solutions and services you use, and providing information in that context. It's about contextually informing the consumer of how to do their role and how to deliver the value, but at the back end, it's about helping the administrator. And a great example of this recently is, a colleague of mine had an incident, and they escalated that to the service desk, and they identified a roaming user, a roaming analyst who was walking around the cubicles. They knew where they were by geolocation, and they sent them straight in to resolve that problem because it required some hands-on support. This is the type of solution we're seeing today. Another industry trend we're seeing today is this notion of walk-up support, where you go and set up a service desk in the middle of your environment, maybe in your cafeteria or somewhere like that, and your end users can come immediately to you and talk to you and actually access you. It's bringing service management to the people. And you see that in people using mobility to actually drive the value out of there. Now, we talked before about management and management's use and reporting and dashboarding. Now, one of the problems that has been around forever, hasn't it, is this ability to get good information. The ability to take all this data we have and triage it and use it. Now, we talk a lot about big data and how we're bringing these things together. One of the aspects of what we really need to do is to bring this data together so that we can use it for reporting. Now, reporting should be difficult and complex. It should be simple to do. So one of the concepts that we've gone and done with CA Cloud Service Management is we've gone and looked at this reporting environment so that we can deliver the reports that you want out of the box, as well as the ability for you to configure these reports based on your use case, based on your role, based on what you do in your life. And that's a key aspect. And then from there, you want to be able to change it based on your changing parameters and use. One of the interesting things that I've seen people do now is they want to really be able to do some what-if analysis, some productive triage. They want to start looking at trends. And you're going to start seeing a lot more of that going forward in the future. I think one of the other aspects of this is to get immediately productive, like I said earlier. So what we've gone and done for the analyst is self-guided help. So when you pick up the tool set, you can go and use the self-guided help to configure your environment. I think it's a key aspect because the analyst has a hard enough job being an analyst. If you think about being an analyst, you've got to answer the phone, you've got to solve tickets, you've got to write knowledge documents, you've got so much to do, and that work is very complex. So one of the things we've really looked at here is this self-guided help so that you can actually configure the system based on the YouTube videos, the information that's provided, the self-help, the knowledge documents, so you can configure the solution based on where you are. So what is the value proposition? So based on the guiding principles that we have, what we've gone and done is developed CA Cloud Service Management with these principles in mind, with a few pieces of guidance. Number one, rapid implementation. What we've been trying to do here and what we've successfully done in the initial implementations is looked at rapid implementation of less than a week. From beginning to basic incident, problem and change, less than a week, productive and being used. How to maintain? Always less than 2 FTEs for any organisation. That's the next guide. Of course, there's configuration rather than coding, and of course, automatic upgrades. Good example is Apps Associates. And Apps Associates, as they were looking for service management solutions, weren't just doing IT service management. You notice I haven't mentioned IT in front of service management very much. They were looking at providing service across their customer base. Service so that anybody who would want any service could go and request that service or log that incident and then have it resolved. It could be tracked and ultimately delivered. It's very interesting in that one of their requirements is they needed to dramatically reduce the number of analysts who were configuring the system and customizing the system and upgrading the system. They wanted to remove it to a situation where they could do this as a part-time role, where they could just use those people for configuration rather than customization, but more importantly, move that headcount across to driving organisational value. And that's one of the key aspects of this. If you're looking to move your organisation to where you're driving value to the organisation rather than managing tool sets, this has got to be one of the guidance or guiding principles that you have. So as you can see here, one of the steps here that we've really prided ourselves on in terms of delivery is changing the basis. Instead of having months to implement a solution, we talk about days and weeks. Instead of just being focused on writing script and writing JavaScript and ARS and things like that, we focus on your ability to configure what you do. We want to reduce the number of headcount worrying about system upgrades and maintenance and management and give you headcount back to drive value to your organisation. Upgrades are automatic, and of course, as you want to extend, we include it in the system. So the guidance here, we believe, is for service management, we've got to get to a point where everybody is not just blaming the tool set. It's not just every 4 years, the tool set must be broken because our processes are not working. We've got to go and buy a different tool set. One of the things here is we've looked at the 3 major demographics of business leaders, support teams and employees and delivered capabilities within the tool set to support each of those. We're delivering on the new rules: fast, flexible, powerful and personal. Personal to be integrated to each of your requirements. So as we talk about that, one of the things we want to talk about today is if you haven't visited the Service Management Pod, we'd like you to do that. If you want to sign up for a free trial, there'll be a lucky draw later to see who wins a prize, to see if you can win that, and we'd like to encourage you to try and do that. The objective of CA Cloud Service Management is to provide SaaS in the new rules of SaaS, something that allows you to drive value to your organisation, value to your customers, and deliver on the promise of SaaS, the promise that has got us all excited in this industry. And whether you're using this product for software, IT service management or facilities or HR or whatever it is you use it, it will support all of those. So with that said, my time is up. I'd like to thank you for this time. Visit the pod, sign up for a free trial, and thank you very much.